I'll try this a new way. I'm gonna show you the tricks that I know. I'm getting tired of talking, and I need more of a show right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time, and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a fun night. You got me up tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high. I won't be turning around. No, I won't be turning around. It's the right time. You feeling alright? I'm playing your game like I will win tonight. I think I'll do it on my way. I'm gonna show you what I'm going through. Get you out of your comfort zone, 'cause I need more of the truth right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time, and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a fun night. You got me up tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high.
Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the race reaction for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Race reaction and review, I should say. I'm going to say this right at the start for anyone that's tuning in tomorrow and doesn't want to listen to the whole stream. There possibly won't be a video tomorrow. I've got some stuff to sort out, that's all I'm going to say, and that's going to take priority tomorrow. So if I can get one out, I will. If not, this is your review and your reaction. It'll be exactly the same as normal. Probably with less waffle though, because it was an intriguing race. It was a very good opening third to that Grand Prix, I must say, but it's not exactly been an absolute thriller. Not like that first race, but I still think a good race. Let me know what you think, chat. I think it was okay. It wasn't the best thing we've ever seen, but I quite enjoyed parts of it. Certainly, watching likes of Bottas and go scrapping back through the field. Quick look at the result before I'm joined by somebody. I legit cannot remember who the hell I invited onto this stream today, so it'll be a nice surprise for all of us. Lewis Hamilton took a dominant victory today, 8.7 seconds clear of Verstappen, but that was with a late pit stop as well. He was even further up the road. Max Verstappen, second place for him. I think he's very happy with that result. Valtteri Bottas in third. Didn't seem quite so happy post-race, did he? Lance Stroll in fourth place. Good result for him. Fifth place for Alexander Albon. Sixth for Sebastian Vettel. I think Ferrari, weirdly, will be quite content with that one. Seventh for Sergio Perez. Fell away in the Grand Prix. We'll talk more about each of these drivers, of course, as we get into the stream. Daniel Ricciardo, 8th. Kevin Magnussen, 9th. Carlos Sainz in 10th. Not a great weekend for McLaren, really. Charles Leclerc, 11th. Yeah. Daniel Kvyat, 12th. Lando Norris, 13th. Esteban Ocon, 14th. Quiet weekend I found for him. Romain Grosjean, 15th. Didn't work out for him in the end. He was looking good at one point now for some good points. Kimi Raikkonen, 16th. Giovinazzi, 17th. So they've gone from the back of the grid to 16th and 17th. A weekend to forget, I think, for Alfa, although Kimi had some good racing action at one point. George Russell, 18th place. Nicholas Latifi, 19th. And Pierre Gasly. You talk about weekends to forget. That's what he's had. He didn't get out in FP1 because he had power unit issues. He was rained off in FP2, of course, like everybody else. FP3, he was complaining of issues. Qualifying, he had power unit issues. Took a load of new components. Looks like his power unit failed in the race. I mean, that is... the poor guy. The poor guy. But anyway, let's say a very good afternoon to... It's Dan. Hello, Dan. It's you that's on the stream with me today.
Oh, hopefully that's a good surprise for you, mate. But thanks for having me. Not a bad race today, was it? I mean, not a 10 out of 10 fantastic one, but I think it was all right. So thanks for having me on to have this little chat. And also, just quickly, congrats on the big 100k, mate. Well done.
Oh, thanks. I still don't know what to say to other than thank you, and everyone, that's all he ever says is thank you. It's like, yes, but thank you. And yeah, it's great to have you on. I mean, thank you for turning up. I'm just glad I remembered to invite somebody. Would have been a very short stream. But no, I agree. I mean, we're not talking the Austrian Grand Prix, are we, in terms of drama and excitement? And I'd probably say I honestly enjoyed the Styrian Grand Prix more. I think there was a little bit more variation in there, but there's no denying that first third of the Grand Prix today. Everybody starting on inters, not sure who's going to do what, some gambles on the dry tyre towards the back. I think we got a really good sort of first 20 laps, I would say.
Yeah, no, I'd agree, but I think I preferred this one to the Styrian Grand Prix. I mean, probably had something to do with the fact I was rooting for K-Mag the entire Grand Prix and hoping he could just hold on. And maybe the fight at the front wasn't as good, but I really do think there were stories up and down the grid today. We had some brilliant side-by-side battles in that midfield, and we had Verstappen and Bottas right at the end as well. So I've seen a couple of people on the old Twitter, never trust that site, but a couple of people moaning, but I really do think today's race was pretty good.
Yeah, it's not I mean, whatever we say here, somebody will accuse us of pushing the agenda, trying to make F1 look better than it actually is. But no, it wasn't a bad race at all. Maybe I'll watch the highlights again later. I might change my view on it. But yeah, I mean, that quite tense at the end, especially F2 with Callum Ilott and Luca Giotto. That's what the whole Verstappen Bottas thing reminded me of. I thought, oh, here we go again. Is he going to do it? But yeah, we'll talk about Bottas in a minute. But Lewis Hamilton, got to start there. I mean, dominant. Is that... Does that do it justice? He just got off that line perfectly, disappeared up the road and never looked back. Lost the lead very briefly through the pit stops, but he was just unstoppable today, wasn't he? Absolutely unstoppable.
Yeah, I'm starting to think this Lewis Hamilton guy, he's pretty good.
He's all right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 3-second gap after one lap. I mean, come on, that is just ridiculous. We know he's good at Hungary. Yesterday, he's good. Well, he proved he's fantastic at this circuit. Wet conditions, kind of, in the opening stages, that always is going to play into the hands of Lewis Hamilton, and was so close to that Grand Slam, just missed out because Verstappen stayed out a little bit longer in that opening stint. But sublime performance today. And I think a couple of people, including myself, were perhaps a little bit nervous after that first race of the season where he got those couple of penalties qualifying and in the race. But the last two Grand Prix has been untouchable. And maybe, just maybe, it's already looking at Bottas's hands for a championship.
Yeah, I got the feeling after the race, and this isn't a knock at Lewis Hamilton or Mercedes. You know, I always bang this drum that people moan at how dominant they are, when actually we should be moaning that Red Bull and Ferrari can't build a car capable of competing with them. That's always going to be my stance. But I did get that feeling today. Has Lewis had his blip with that first race in Austria? Is this it now? Is he going to disappear with this World Championship? And you know, I don't think that's a. People don't like that, but at the same time, I think we're witnessing history, and I think there should be a lot of credit there to Mercedes. I mean, that car is just, was it flat through turn 11 in qualifying? I mean, Jesus, on board was absolutely stunning. So massive credit to Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. The constructors is done. I know we've only had 3 races, but I don't think there's any debate in that one now. And I think Lewis is looking very strong for that title. 8th win in Hungary as well. So how many wins is that now? I know he got 90 pole positions yesterday, but he's not far off Michael. I seem to think somebody on Twitter suggesting he could do it by Monza. That win record. Ugh,
yeah, I think he's 5 off. Crazy.
Yeah. As a Schumacher fan, I'm going to be so pleased that day. No, genuinely. I mean, huge credit. There's not really... I mean, what can we say? I know people sort of... I don't want people to think we're brushing over what a brilliant drive this was, but what can we really say about Lewis today? Because he did just disappear, controlled the race perfectly, wasn't really flat out. I did enjoy his exchange with Bono over the radio about tyres towards the end. Bono like, we need to go to the hards, Lewis. And Lewis sort of sat there going, oh, I want the softs. I'm going for this fastest lap. No. We need to go to the hards. No, I want the softs. And that was it. Driver got his way in the end. But yeah, I mean, unless I've missed something, Dan.
I don't think so. Like you honestly run out of things to say because it was such a controlled race. From what we saw, there was no mistakes. But to be honest, we didn't really see anything because he was such in a world of his own. I think Crofty said at about lap 25, we hadn't seen Hamilton. We saw an onboard for about 30 seconds, and then we saw him cross the line at the end. So, I mean, in the racing driver's point of view, that's exactly what they want. They want it as easy as you like. But like you say, you really do have to give props, not just to Hamilton, but to the whole team in general, because that car is just ridiculous this year. And to think they've got it next year as well, he's in a very good position, isn't he, to beat a few records.
Yeah, I said this to John T the other, I think it was John T, or it was somebody. I have a memory like a sieve today. It's ridiculous. But I spoke to somebody the other week about it, and you know, Lewis Hamilton, as a Schumacher fan, of course, I want him to keep hold of those records. But if somebody's going to break them, I'd rather a Lewis Hamilton, for example, went and smashed them. Whoever's going to break Schumacher's records, I want them to do it with at least an extra world title, maybe 2, lots more wins, so that at least it's a well-beaten record. I don't want that record beaten by just a win here or there and level on chat. Do you know what I mean? If you get what I'm getting at, I just want it to be, if it's going to be beaten, do it properly. That's how Schumacher's records deserve to be beaten. There's bias there on Michael Schumacher, of course there is.
There is.
Yeah.
You're sounding like a salty fanboy here, mate. But,
dare he?
Yeah, I know. I'm off. I mean, you would say Hamilton's going to beat most of these records sooner rather than later. I mean, I wasn't privy to watching the majority of Schumacher's races. I'm one of many youngsters these days that only saw him in his Mercedes days, but it would be quite, I know what you mean, disappointing in the sense that Schumacher's going to lose that title of being the greatest of all time in terms of the statistics. But at the same time, Lewis has been so untouchable for so long now. And there will be people that say it's boring. But like you mentioned right at the beginning of the stream, this is history we're watching here. And even if we do get a couple of races that could be like Paul Ricard last season, we are watching history. And it's a testament to them because Lewis generally very, very rarely puts a foot wrong. There was that couple of mistakes in Austria at the beginning of this season, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was it for the entire season. He really is that good. And there are some people that will say, it's just the car. It's not just the car. Even Bottas today struggled to get past Verstappen and even struggled to get past Lance Stroll. So Hamilton, we all know he's an all-time great. And if anyone's going to beat Schumacher's record, I think it's more than fair it's a driver like Lewis Hamilton.
I mean, it is the car in a sense that he couldn't do it on foot, but it's not.
Wow.
I know what you mean. It's not just
Yeah.
the car. If you're new to the channel, so many new subscribers in the last few weeks, me and Dan basically just banter for an hour. Is about all it is. No, not really. It's not that bad. There are a few moments. Max Verstappen, let's move on to him. Got the official driver of the day, Dan. I don't want to give too much away now, but I think he's up there for me. Possibly the only driver who could retire from the race and still finish second. He crashed on the way to the grid on the damp track into the wall, damage to his front left suspension or arms on the suspension or whatever it was, and then broken front wing. He's ready to get back in the pits. His race is over before it's even started. And the guys on the grid do, I think there's any commentary about an hour's worth of work in 12 minutes and had the parts on the car with about 30 seconds before they had to be... The tyres had to be on the car, so they literally were right to the wire. And that team, those mechanics deserve so much credit. This is the third race weekend in a row. They are all absolutely knackered, and they still managed to do that. Huge credit to the team, but massive credit to Verstappen, because that car can't have felt the same as it did in qualifying yesterday, because there are new parts on it, whether they're all, whatever, homologated or whatever to fit the car immediately. They're not going to feel exactly the same. So I think one of his... maybe not one of his best drives, one of his better drives for me. I think he drove exceptionally well today to get that car to the end. And yeah, like I say, retiring on the way to the grid and still manages to finish second. Not bad.
Well, I mean, it was very Grosjean-esque on the way to the grid. That's what it reminded me of. And I thought, oh no, Max, come on. I mean, Red Bull hadn't had a great start to the weekend at all. And that's a huge understatement. It really wasn't going well. 7th on the grid. And I don't know about you, mate, but I was really questioning whether they'd even get close to the podium, yet alone third place or even big points positions. And that mistake on the way to the grid, I was in disbelief. Of all drivers, we know Max Verstappen is fantastic in wet conditions and, like Hamilton, doesn't make mistakes all that often. So when it popped up, I kind of thought, is this a replay of practice? Is this something I missed? Until Crofty started screaming. I thought, oh my goodness me. And the tyre was wailing all over the place. You're thinking, there's no way they're fixing that car. And even if they do, surely got to be a pit lane start. But fair play to those Red Bull mechanics. Yes, there's a little investigation going on with Albon, with the Red Bull mechanics, but on Verstappen's side of the grid, what a job they did. Not only, like you say, to get it working and to get him starting the Grand Prix, but to get all the way to the checkered flag, for Max's pace to be better than it pretty much has been the entire weekend. And even those opening few laps, I mean, Verstappen's opening lap was amazing. It was incredible, straight away up into the top 4. And I would have kind of assumed it would have maybe taken him a couple of laps just to find that rhythm again in the car. But no, he was just off. He was loving it. And like you say, a really, really strong drive. Yes, he was helped out with Bottas having his issues behind. But with all those factors at play, fair play. What a drive from Max today.
Just more proof that you should never listen to Helmut Marko. He said yesterday after qualifying that there was so much doom and gloom around the team, they didn't even think that they'd be able to challenge for a podium, let alone get anyone anywhere near grabbing one. I suppose the conditions maybe help, because we know how Max is good in the wet weather, but he was still good on the drying track and the drier track. But it looked after qualifying like Racing Point had got that podium in the bag. It was going to be, there was talk of team orders to try and make sure they got that. So in fact, Lance Stroll said afterwards he thought the podium was in reach. But I think massive credit to Verstappen, massive credit to Red Bull. And, they say it in commentary on Sky quite often, thank God for Verstappen at the minute. I'm not taking away from Mercedes, but if it wasn't for him, it would have been Bottas would have got his way up into second place and disappeared. So great job. And on really old tyres as well, to hold off a, let's face it, far quicker Mercedes on fresher tyres was a hell of a job. So yeah, I think huge credit and important points. I think Red Bull are probably looking at second in the Constructors this year. So probably going to end up ironically in no man's land again, as they have been in third for so many years just recently. But yeah, I think I don't know. I just can't believe it. When I saw him in the wall, I thought that was it. So for him to be able to get second is a massive recovery. Bottas, talking of recoveries, jumped the start. He did. By definition of the word, of the phrase, if you like, moving before the lights went out, he jumped the start, but apparently didn't trigger the sensor, controversially, for jumping the start. No steward investigation, no penalty, nothing like that at the moment. Anyway, it could, of course, change between now and whenever. They might look at it, but was that a jump start for you, Dan? I mean, like I say, by definition, he's moved before the lights have gone out. Whether he stops or not, it's sort of irrelevant because he's jumped the start. I keep saying it, so I'm kind of clear on my position there.
Yeah, it's a jump start, and it reminds me so much of Kimi Raikkonen last year in Russia, in the sense that he made a jump start, he went backwards, but Kimi got smacked about with a drive-through penalty, and that was in the opening 5 or 6 laps, they noticed that. But like you mentioned, apparently the trigger wasn't, or the sensor wasn't triggered, apologies. But it reminds me more of something that happened in Formula E last year, and it was Da Costa who was on pole, and he did something very similar. He jumped the start, stopped, and then got going again. But it was because he was a little bit further back in his box and obviously didn't go past the sensor. And I wondered if Bottas did a similar kind of thing. But then Jonty put the onboard up on Twitter, and it really does look like a slam dunk. And even if he didn't trigger the sensor, it's pretty blatant jump start. So I'm very, very surprised there's no investigation at the moment. And maybe a team will lodge a protest over the next couple of days, but I think the gap to Stroll is about 50 seconds behind. So even with quite a hefty penalty, he'd probably still hold on to the podium. But I do think it's a little disappointing because it was a blatant jump start, and that could have changed completely how the whole race panned out.
I mean, there's some that will put the argument forward that he sort of stops. I need to watch the onboard again because I think if he does stop, it's only for a very split second, if that. But and he goes backwards and always had his penalty. But the rules don't say that. The rules nowhere state, this driver's hit that driver, but that driver came off worse, so that's a penalty. There's nothing like that. It's the same with jump starts. There's nothing in the rules that say, well, so long as he loses a few places, that's fine. Because if we start to look for loopholes like that and open up, oh, that's a mess. That is going to be such a mess with every incident. Well, he did lose a place, so it's okay. So I think that's a rule that probably should be looked at. It probably won't be. I don't think the rule has changed at all. I often have a look through the regulations before the start of the season because I'm just that much fun. And I didn't see anything highlighted in purple as having changed on there, so I think the jump start rules are the same. If I were the steward, any driver that does that gets a penalty because you're moving before lights out, but ultimately what we would do is irrelevant because if the rule states that a sensor has to be triggered for it to be a jump start and the sensor hasn't been triggered, the steward's hands are pretty much tied. You can do all the onboards and look at all the footage you like. At the end of the day, the stewards have got a rule book to follow. We had this so many times in Formula One. We look at stuff and go, that's a slam dunk penalty, and the stewards go, yeah, but actually the rules don't allow us to penalise that. So again, we can blame the stewards, as I'm sure we all will throughout this season, but it's the rule book that needs to be looked at. So I would have said penalty, but he did okay, Bottas, to get back up to third place. I'm very surprised he couldn't pass Verstappen. I say that tongue in cheek. I'm not that surprised. We've seen before Bottas, lovely guy, doesn't often have that little, if Hamilton gets that close to Verstappen, he's through. If Vettel gets through, probably spins. If Leclerc's in that position, he gets the job done. Bottas just needs to be a little bit more ruthless. But at the same time, race 3, can't afford to be in spins and putting it in the wall and losing parts of his car. Third place, probably good damage limitation given the start, and at least he's only 5 points behind Hamilton in the championship. I'm just thinking, trying to get in Bottas's mindset. Is he one of those drivers that thinks about the championship, a bit of a professor in that sense, if that makes sense? I could send this up the inside of Max, but I'm going to settle for third place, not take any risks, and then we'll go a bit harder in the next race, and we'll try and recover from there. Because if he puts it into the side of Verstappen, damages his car, and that's his race over, that's possibly championship gone, because we could only have 10 races this season, as it is, if you get what I'm saying, Dan.
Yeah, but then at the same time, points were worth more in the sense that this move, if he gets second every single race, or I suppose Hamilton can kind of afford that now, that could cost him big time. And I suppose we spent pretty much the whole of 2018 discussing this, didn't we? I remember in Bahrain at the beginning of the year, he didn't make that move on Vettel and then did it a few more times across the season and never won at all that year. And I think today, yeah, it's not a bad drive in the sense that he was able to recover from a dreadful start. Pretty much everyone on that left-hand side of the grid seemed to struggle on the opening lap. But I think the thing for me that I was really surprised at was when he got stuck behind Lance Stroll, because that was a hell of a long time he was stuck behind Lance Stroll. I don't know the exacts, of course, but I think must have been a good 10 or 15 laps. And for someone in a car that's a year older than Bottas is, if we want to call it the 2019 Mercedes, I don't know. I think for someone in Bottas's shoes, where he realistically knows he's going to be Hamilton's only challenger for the title, I just generally would have thought he would have had a bit more fire in his belly today, would have wanted to have that bit more of a hurry up. And it was only once Albon, I think it was, had cleared both Haas cars that Bottas finally got a bit of a move on. But it took him quite a while to really go for that move. And they had to do it through the pit stops and through strategy. I don't know. I was just very, very surprised at that. And yeah, he maybe could have gone for a massive dive bomb into turn one in that final lap. I was a bit surprised he didn't. We saw Alex Albon doing it all day, and the majority of drivers were quite accommodating to that into turn one. And he didn't even quite attempt it. And yeah, sure, he could have been a race-ending move. He could have slammed into the side of Verstappen, ended way out of the points. But to not even attempt a move when he knew there was traffic for the rest of the lap, I don't know. I expected at least something from Valtteri, but I suppose, yeah, damage limitation, third place isn't really the end of the world.
He got stuck behind Stroll in Germany last year, didn't he? So I don't know if that's Stroll's driving or if the racing point is just a bit too slippery in a straight line. We know the Mercedes isn't fantastic in traffic, is it? That could be an issue for him. But and it's not easy to overtake at Hungary either. So I suppose that's something to take into account. But yeah, I think when he dropped out of position, I thought he would just be straight back up to second place and that would be it. I thought Hamilton had it in the bag, like you said, after that first lap, 3 seconds up the road. But I thought Bottas would be straight through the field and into second place. And he was out of position last year in Hungary, wasn't he? And he had to make that early stop for front wing damage and it took him a while to get through. So I think that highlights what I was saying about Bottas, but probably also more about that Mercedes not being good in traffic and also what's the word I'm looking for? Can't remember how difficult it is. There it is to overtake around Hungary. So yeah, all right, third place today. Damage limitation ultimately because of that mistake at the start, but I'm quite surprised he didn't get a penalty. Also, a little bit sloppy in the overtake with Leclerc, as Jonty's pointed out in chat. Went for it, didn't he, initially, and then got in the water, splashed through, understeered, bit slippery, cold tyres. Yeah, kind of threw that one away. That wasn't his finest moment, but he took the chance. I'm sat here saying he should be taking more chances, and then when he does, I'm criticising him. So poor guy can't win, can he, at the end of the day? But yeah, I don't know. I think if you know you're in a championship fight with Lewis Hamilton and it is just between you and him, you've got to take risks. You've got to take risks because he will, and he will be the one. You know, if he loses the championship by a handful of points, we might be looking back at Hungary and saying, if only he'd done that move, if only he'd gone for that move. And it's kind of how I feel with it. But we'll see. Could be a long way to go. I think the FIA and Liberty are still aiming for 16 to 18 races. At the minute, they're only 10. That could be where we get stuck. But yeah, these could be quite important points and he needs to get them done. But I think I want to move on from the top three, really. There's not much more I can say before I'm accused of Bottas hate once again. But yeah, I don't know, Dan. I don't know what I want to say. Let's move on. Lance Stroll, P4. Disappointed, like I said earlier, after the race. He thought podium was on today. And I think I'm surprised Racing Point weren't challenging for that, in all honesty, because Perez just fell away, didn't he? In the race, he had a bad start, fell back through the field and never really recovered. Where did he end up in the end? Was he P7? Which was quite a surprise. I thought he would be right on the gearbox of Lance all the way and really fighting him. And there was talk of team orders, like I said earlier in the stream. So, yeah, I'm quite surprised that they weren't a little bit closer. But we did see in Styria that they're not good in the wet. So maybe what Racing Point need is a weekend where weather does not affect anything, because then we'll be able to see what they've really got. But I think what we saw in qualifying yesterday backs up that they believe they're the second fastest team at the moment.
Which is scary.
Very scary.
For so long, even after the winter, I think most of us were questioning whether they were really that quick. Surely they can't beat Ferrari. Goodness me, we look silly now. fair play to them. And you can question their methods of getting to the front. But to lock out that second row was a real statement from the team. And also Lance Stroll getting third on the grid. With all the talk at the moment about Perez and Vettel, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But for Stroll, someone who constantly gets, well, ripped into really from the media and Twitter and the public saying he's not quite good enough for F1 and Perez is so much better. I was surprised yesterday, considering qualifying is usually his weakness. He put in a shift, he got third. And today, like you say, Perez just fell backwards. And I was maybe worrying about that pace of the Racing Point, but Stroll's pace seemed to be very, very good. Like I say, held off Bottas for a good chunk of that race, had a good little fight with Max as well in the opening couple of laps. And that is just something we're so not used to with Lance Stroll. I mean, even looking at the result now, behind him, Albon and Vettel, if you'd have said that 12 months ago, you'd have laughed. You really wouldn't have believed it. But a real coming of age kind of drive today from Lance Stroll, made no mistakes, changing conditions in the opening stages. And you know what? Even if he does stay next year and Perez does get moved on, if he can drive like he has today, I think Racing Point have got a very, very good little driver in that car.
I'll say what I've always said. Do I think Lance Stroll is a world beater? No, not by a long shot, but he's a damn sight better than some people give him credit for. And I think we're going to see that this season. Now he's got a car that is capable of doing that. Dylan in chat just pointing out that Perez has been out-qualified by Stroll 2 races in a row now. Give him the car and he can perform. But I find it quite odd. And I think this is why there's a lot of unease around Formula One about what Racing Point have done. I think if they are focusing on 2022 and they haven't got the budget to build a car next year and they didn't have it for this year, they've done a smart thing. Most people, even Martin Brundle, who doesn't like it at all, would have done the same as a team boss. But it's quite an uneasy feeling that the only thing right now that can get anywhere near a 2020 Mercedes is a 2019 Mercedes. It is massively concerning, and it really highlights the poor job, I can't put it any other way, the poor job at the moment that Red Bull and Ferrari are doing. If we've got what is effectively a year-old car beating them. And I know we're not going to say that every race. Red Bull, I mean, I think they've probably overperformed a little bit there with Max Verstappen. I think their pace yesterday was so bad. I didn't expect them to get anywhere near the podium, a bit like Helmut Marko. So, but yeah, I think Racing Point have got a shot at beating Ferrari. I do still think Red Bull will go second this year, but yeah, I think that would be, I mean, how embarrassing would that be for Maranello? Beaten by a copy of a Mercedes, that's not going to be good. I've got a feeling they might already be focusing on 22. I wouldn't blame them whatsoever. But yeah, I think Stroll today, really good driving, kind of on his own a little bit at times, wasn't he? Pretty comfortable. He, again, felt that he had the pace to do more, so that's a good thing. So there's more in that car, and I think he's going to surprise a few people this season. Alexander Albon, we'll talk about him. Really good recovery today, 13th on the grid to end up in P5, but there's a little bit of controversy brewing around him. He is under investigation with the stewards because the team were artificially drying the track around his grid slot, and that is completely forbidden. And Sky was speculating about possible penalties, which could be anything from a time penalty to full disqualification, because it is one of those rules that has been breached. The evidence is pretty damning, so I think he's probably going to get something, but we'll have to wait and see. I'll have a look on Twitter in a minute and make sure that there hasn't been an announcement. This could rumble on, actually, a few hours yet, so we might not get it on the stream. But I think just pushing that investigation aside, Dan, I think he covered himself in quite a lot of glory today and answered a few of his critics. I know he's had a bit of an up and down start to the season, but don't forget, could have been on the podium in that first race in Austria. There's been some criticism, speculation about his seat. There's George Russell yesterday saying Red Bull are making him look like an idiot, and he's not. He's a very good driver. He's a quick guy, and he's come out today. He's made some very good aggressive overtaking moves, which I said in the race look ahead yesterday I really wanted him to do. Great move up the inside of a few drivers, around the outside of others. He was really racy today, and I think that's a guy who's very frustrated at all of this speculation and criticism he's getting, and he's pulled out a very, very good result today, and I think he could be very proud of that. That he possibly could have done more if he started further up the grid. He could have been looking at a podium today, if maybe not holding off Bottas, but you never know what's going to happen. But I think he could be very proud of that drive today.
Yeah, it was a strong drive, a solid drive. I think last weekend in the Styrian Grand Prix, almost called it the Austrian Grand Prix, I think he was, even though it was fourth place, it was finally some points after a disappointing first race of the season. I think he was a little bit flat. I think the gap between himself and Max, he's probably a little bit disappointed about. And of course, in qualifying yesterday, out in Q2, really isn't where he wants to be. Red Bull, you would argue, should be comfortably in the top 10. So to fight back like he did today, and like you mentioned, not only was he good with strategy, but he was really racy when he needed to be, punchy when he needed to be, making those overtakes, not at silly times or silly places, but making sure he went into turn one, had enough space. I think he got a little bit racy with Grosjean, a little bit contact between those two, but nothing too silly. And that's exactly what Red Bull needed. I mean, we speak about last year with Gasly. I mean, Gasly was pretty mediocre in Red Bull, and maybe that's a bit of a being a bit kind. But the one thing he was lacking was that overtaking ability. And I think some people will point out that Alex today was almost a lap behind his teammate, and that's not ideal. But Hungary is a circuit notoriously difficult for overtaking, and he did exactly that. So big points again. I think if he can just help Red Bull trickle along in the standings, make sure they secure that second place and overall finish the season in fourth. I'm not quite sure where he is in the driver's standing, so apologies. But I think that's all he needs to do this year. And to be Max's rear gunner, which he wasn't quite this weekend, but considering where he started, I think that's a more than acceptable job today. And some of those criticisms earlier on in the weekend, I think he's put to bed.
So looking at Twitter, no word yet on Albon's penalty or the outcome of that investigation. However, oh my God, Dan, brace yourself for this, mate. Renault have protested against the Racing Point.
Oh, no.
Yeah, moving on. Haas Haas have been summoned to the stewards as well for allegedly using driver aids during the Hungarian Grand Prix. The stewards are looking at alleged breach of Article 27.1 of the sporting regulations, driver aids during the formation lap. That's all there is at the moment. That's one that will rumble on for hours. We won't get that in on the stream. So Haas, they are under investigation. Albon is still under investigation. And Racing Point are under investigation because Renault are salty. Simple as that. There we go. Let's not get into that one. So I'll keep an eye on those, but I don't expect any news on those. Well, we won't hear anything about Renault and Racing Point until I think they want to do a hearing by Silverstone at the British Grand Prix, I think they said, but I think that's ambitious. That's only 2 weeks away, isn't it? So we'll see. But yeah, that's a conversation for another day. Renault and Racing Point, absolutely, definitely. Where were we up to? We was about Albon, weren't we? But yeah, I think championship-wise, I agree with you. His job, and this was the thing with Gasly last year. His job isn't to beat Max Verstappen. It's just, Albon's job is not to beat Max Verstappen. He needs to be there, back him up, bring in the results. Ideally, if Max finishes second, then Albon needs to be third or fourth, something around there. Just mixing it with the Mercedes, giving them options on strategy. That is his job at Red Bull. That is also why I don't think Sebastian Vettel will be in that car anytime soon. They want a rear gunner like an Albon or a Gasly that will do a job for a team and not push Max too hard. I think that team is built around him. But it's interesting that Albon was lapped this year and Gasly was lapped last year. And it just points to the fact that maybe the drivers aren't the problem in that second car at Red Bull. It's a team completely built around Max Verstappen. Albon just needs to keep doing what he's doing. And I think he will come good. There's a lot more. I don't know about you, Dan, and chat, let me know as well. I think he has, and I hate saying this because I love Pierre. He's fantastic. But I think there's more potential for improvement there from Albon than there was from Gasly. Towards the end of his time at the main Red Bull team, I didn't look at Gasly and think, yeah, he's going to do it this weekend. Whereas Albon, you can see there's something else there. And it might even just be in the overtakes that we see. He's willing to take that risk, and Red Bull very much like that.
I'm torn on this one. I really am, because I agree with you in the sense that Gasly just wasn't good enough at the time for Red Bull. But since he's gone back to Toro Rosso and now Alfa Tauri, he's really been putting in the shift. But I think the issue for Gasly was that pressure, those first couple of crashes in winter testing. And we know how toxic that Red Bull family can be at times. And we've even seen it this weekend. I think Verstappen getting frustrated earlier on with how the car was behaving. Albon a little bit disappointed and a bit back chatty on the radio a little bit to the team. And that's sometimes the nature of Formula One. And I think they have to stick with Albon. I think that's going to be crucial for them, just to have that bit of consistency for a couple of years. And he's even today qualified 13th, fought back, ended up P5. We've said it several times. That's exactly what he needs to do. He doesn't do unnecessary crashes, unnecessary sillinesses or incidents, and they just need a solid driver just to be there. And that's exactly what they've got in Alex Albon. And with Verstappen not quite having the car to really challenge the Mercedes, they just need a bit of consistency. So I think they would be silly to change that up and just change up the dynamic for the sake of change.
A couple of people in chat just saying Albon wasn't lapped. I mean, he wasn't in the classification, but at one point he was lapped. That's the point. If Hamilton doesn't make that extra stop, he is lapped. So, and he didn't need to make that extra stop in the end. So, yeah, not officially, but he was. He was passed by the leader. It's probably the way to put it, and then got that back when the leader pitted. But you get what I mean. Stop being so pedantic. I think what we need to do, Dan, because I could talk about this whole Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari battle and what's going on Racing Point all night, because I'm kind of loving what's going on at the minute. There's so much behind the scenes and so many questions, but I think we need to start rocking through this race result. We're only at Albon in 5th, Sebastian Vettel 6th. I think that's a good result. I do, for Ferrari. I know it seems crazy saying that, but realistically, that's kind of where they are now, isn't it? At best, the 4th best car, but I fear that this was supposed to be their best chance of a really good result this weekend, and I think they might struggle when we get to Silverstone. So this weekend maybe 4th best, next weekend they could end up back down sort of 5th, 6th place again. So they're important points for Vettel, outperforming Leclerc as well, who was down in 11th place, and I think Seb just kind of got on with it a bit today, didn't he? Some moments. I think Ferrari should probably have let Sebastian Vettel go a lap earlier than they did. I don't think he would have been challenging Albon ahead. He was quite a way off in the end, 7 seconds, but I think that time behind Leclerc cost him, if I'm being honest. But at the end of the day, commentary pointed out as well, this is the problem when you get rid of your driver for next season, isn't it? They're not going to favour him over Leclerc. So, but I think a decent result for Ferrari today. They'll be, again, it feels so weird saying it, Dan. It really does, but I think they'll be quite happy with 6th place. Bad.
Yeah, I know, and I agree, which is just even worse. Best of the rest is going to have to be their target now. That's pretty much what they've got today. And I think you're right. Seb did do a solid drive today. No spins for once, which makes a change at the moment. And going into this race, he was 15th in the standings, 1 point to his name. A result like this is exactly what he needed, not only for the standings, but his confidence as well. And maybe with an Albon penalty or something, could jump up to 5th. But even if it does remain 6th, I think that's probably the best he could have got out of the car today, and not bad.
An 8, 9, 10-second pit stop as well. So if they let him go a lap earlier, he might have beat Albon, but Albon was pretty pacey towards the end. So yeah, I think that's about all you can get from Ferrari. I don't want to criticise them because that's all we do at the moment. That's all everybody does. But they need to pull their socks up. That's what I'm going to say. That's what they really need to do, because they are nowhere right now in terms of pace, and it's going to be a long season. Of course, next year these cars are frozen as well, so I'm not optimistic. But I think Seb will be happy with that. We talked a little bit about Perez. I just let you come in on Perez there, Dan, because I don't know. Trying to think. I know he went wide at turn 1 at one point, or turn 11, which cost him quite a bit of time, but I can't understand how he dropped down to 7th place in that 2019 Mercedes and didn't make his way back up to the back of Lance Stroll.
Yeah, it was a bit strange. I think it was that Leclerc train, wasn't it? I think all the cars were really struggling because there was Leclerc, Albon, Vettel, Ricciardo, Perez and Sainz, I think it was, for a good chunk of that race. But like you, I really did think with that bit of a straight line speed advantage and the pace yesterday, I thought they'd have been able to get through. And Checo as well is a driver that's usually really punchy in races. So yeah, big surprise that he wasn't able to get further up.
There'll be some conspiracy theories around, I'm sure, at the moment. We'll get to Racing Point and their driver lineup, I'm sure, when we get to Q&A, because I'm pretty confident somebody will ask that question. Probably you, Dan. Like, Sean, let's talk about it. But Daniel Ricciardo, P8. I thought there'd be more pace in that Renault today than that, really. But having a look at the order, 2 Mercedes, 2 Red Bulls, a couple of Racing Points, he's probably where he should be, really. But I think a solid 4 points is probably the way to look at that. He had a nice little scrap with Kevin Magnussen again, throwback to last year, slightly less controversial. I know he wasn't very happy with some of K-Mag's driving 12 months ago, but I think, again, probably a driver that's content with that result. I don't think Daniel Ricciardo's ever going to be happy with 8th, but I think he'll be content with 8th place. And Renault intrigued me as well, because I do think they're better than the pace we're seeing at the moment, but they've been a little bit, I suppose everybody's had the same conditions, haven't they? A bit unlucky with the way the weekends have gone with the chaos and whatnot. But yeah, Help me, Dan. Tell me about Danny Rick. I can't remember seeing much of him. Can you tell?
No, exactly that. I think there was that whole midfield group, wasn't there, which kind of just got stuck in that train. I think for Renault, it's been so up and down those first two Grand Prix. I think they'll just be happy they got both cars to the checkered flag this time round. And Ricciardo, once again, doing a much better job than his teammate. Yes, it'll take Ocon a few rounds to maybe get in the groove of that car, but Danny Rick, you can see why he's moving to McLaren. There's just something about Renault which isn't quite on that upward trajectory that they were on a couple of years ago. And I feel they, like you, I think they've got a car that has got good potential of scoring big points. But at the moment, when you look at the cars in front of them, you think 8th place, that's really not too bad.
I think maybe I'm wrong. It's just the feeling I get. I think the car's better than it was last year. Danny Rick seems to be a lot happier with it. And of course, he drove last year's car. So I think that's an important step. And I agree, Ocon, I think he will improve as the season goes on. He's had a year out. It might take him a little while to get up to speed, settle into that team. But, 3 races in, 4 points. I'd like to have seen a bit more from Ocon this weekend in particular. A little bit disappointed for a very quiet weekend, really. And a fair way off his teammate in the end as well. I mean, I don't know pit stop-wise. Ocon stopped twice. Ricciardo stopped twice. So yeah, needs to be closer to Danny Rick, and I hope he can get a bit closer over the next few races. But yeah, Kevin Magnussen, I think he deserves a lot of credit. Obviously, assuming he keeps that, I think that's a very good 2 points for Haas, and a great strategy call as well, right at the start to go and swap onto those other tyres. I think he's one of those that's probably slid under the radar. He was 5th for quite a while as well, and was doing some very consistent and fairly competitive lap times. So I think Kevin Magnussen could be very, very happy with that result. And I think Haas will be. They've had a bit of a difficult start to the season. I know we're only 3 races in, but I think I was impressed with him today. And K-Mag, for some reason, I seem to hold him to account more than most. He doesn't always wow me, but I was very impressed with him today.
So was I.
Hey,
Big smile.
surprise.
that car is rubbish. That's pretty much all I can say on it. It's so bad that they're really, really struggling. That Ferrari power unit isn't helping. And even both Williams getting through to Q2 and Alfas and Haas's just seem to be in this weird group on their own, way at the back. And it was an incredibly inspired call to bring both those cars in. And Danny Kvyat will be kicking himself that the team didn't let him do that. But like you say, both of them, their pace early doors, Magnussen was better than Grosjean in those early stages, but they were hovering in about 5th and 6th for quite a bit of time. And I think it was only lap 25 that K-Mag finally dropped out of the podium positions. And for a team that haven't even been close to the points this year, what a big turnaround that is. And considering that this weekend their car on paper was slower than the Williams, that's a huge 2 points. And looking at how their car is performing, that may even be their only points of the season. So absolutely massive. And I think now that takes them joint with Alfa Romeo in the constructors. So a big weekend for them. And K-Mag, a fantastic drive to keep some really, really quick cars behind him.
There's some talk, isn't there? They're not going to upgrade the car. So they're going to need weekends like this. But I think it comes down to that strategy call. I mean, they started on the wet, so I assume they were fearing heavy rain and they wanted to get the jump that way. And then as soon as they realised the track wasn't that bad, straight in to slicks was a very bold call. Surprised Danny Kvyat. I'm surprised Alfa Tauri didn't take that gamble with him. He was on the radio, wasn't he, pleading to come into the pits for some slick tyres, and I think they should have pulled him in. I know hindsight is 2020, but he's 17th on the grid. It's what I like to call the Winkelhock effect. It's worth the gamble if you are that far down. Same with the Alphas. I'm surprised it would have been rubbish from a photo opportunity point of view with, 16 cars on the grid or even less. But if I'm in the position that Alfa Romeo are in, that Kvyat was in, and that the Haas boys are in, I'd have had them in at the end of that first lap and put the slicks on, or even start them on the slicks and take that gamble. So yeah, a little bit surprised I didn't. But I think that was an inspired call. Massive props. Is that what the kids say? Massive props. To Kevin Magnussen there, definitely. And to Rogro. And I'm not just saying it because you're here, Dan. I know he ended up 15th place, but he also took advantage of that strategy. And he wasn't on the pace of K-Mag today, but he did a job keeping cars behind him so that Kevin Magnussen could have that time further up the field and not have to push his tyres quite so hard and look after the car a little bit and enjoy that moment for Haas. So I think from a team point of view, he deserves a lot of credit as well for that drive, although ultimately 15th place, of course, which I'm sure you'd have loved to see some points today, but I think good drive all round for Haas.
Yeah, and I think it was just nice to see the cars on track. I think in the opening 2 rounds, we've not seen them at all, except when their brakes were failing. So for them and their sponsors, I'm sure that's a big plus. And yeah, Grosjean, most of the time when we saw him, he was being overtaken by quicker cars. But at the same time, at least he wasn't really trying to fight it. He was just letting them through. He knew he wouldn't be able to really challenge. And for a good chunk of the race, like you mentioned, was keeping those cars behind safely, if that makes sense. He wasn't deliberately crashing him off or squeezing him out the way. He was just keeping a nice distance. So yeah, disappointed with 15th, I think, with K-Mag in the points. But I think Grosjean's race today has enabled the team to get points. So for the team overall, that's a fantastic result.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so, genuinely. Do we really think they're slower than, or just this weekend do you think they were slower than Williams?
Oh, I think all three of those teams, in sense of Williams, Haas, and Alfa, are just in this awful group at the back on their own. And I think it's going to be track specific, but I do think Haas are right. Yeah, I think they're probably worse than Williams. Yeah.
Wow. I'll tell you what, while we're at the back of the grid, then we'll talk about Williams and Alfa Romeo. Great Saturday again for George Russell into Q2 and Latifi as well. I was jumping up and down. I was so excited to see Williams get both cars into Q2. That's how far have they fallen. Oh, bless them. But yeah, no, I was absolutely chuffed for them yesterday. Would have liked to have seen some points. I think a lot of us would, but I think they're going to need a crazy race to be picking up points, in all honesty. But their race pace doesn't seem as strong as their one-lap pace at the moment, but I think they deserve to leave this weekend happy. Where was George in the end? He was P18 and Latifi 90. They were last of all the runners. But Latifi pit 5 times because he just had an absolute shocker, didn't he, today? Absolutely terrible. So the unsafe release that was about as clear an unsafe release as you'll ever see, not only does he get released into the path of science, he also hits him. Then he goes out of the pits and spins with a puncture, and then he's spinning again later. It's just, not a good weekend. Not a good Sunday for Nicholas Latifi after so much promise yesterday. So well off the pace in the end. 3 laps down. Jesus. No, is that 3 laps down on his teammate? Am I reading that right? 5 laps down overall.
Yeah.
Wow. Not a good day for Latifi. But I think there's a lot of positives for Williams, and I think they have taken a step forward. I know things couldn't have been much worse for them. I'm not expecting them to be in Q2 every weekend. I'm not expecting them to be knocking on the door of points. But I think if they can get some kind of development on that car throughout this season, we might get towards the end of the year and they might be challenging sort of 12th, 13th place and then a few retirements and they're fighting for points. But I think if they can get some good development, next year's a big year for Williams. I know it's a transitional year, and part of me hopes, I know this isn't really race related, but part of me hopes that they did do what we were talking about in pre-season, Dan, and just completely forget about the next 2 years. Really, it's just a little bit of development here and there to keep themselves going, but full focus on 22 if they can. Obviously, once they're enabled to work on that car, but I think big steps in the right direction. Alfa Romeo, yeah, weird one. I don't really know what to say. They were well off the pace yesterday, propping up the field. Raikkonen did a good job. He was running 11th quite nicely for a little while. He was doing a good job in that car, but they just fell away. And I think this is the thing. Alfa Romeo and Haas as well, they are victims of whatever's going on at Ferrari, aren't they? They've got a terrible power unit in the back of that car at the moment in terms of straight line speed. That's costing them massively against the Mercedes runners and even the likes of the Renault runners and your Alfa Tauris with the Honda power. So I think they could have really decent cars, but that power unit is not doing the job for them. So I think I'm concerned that we've kind of got this. Mercedes have gone, then we're going to have Red Bull, and then we're going to have sort of Racing Point, McLaren, Renault, Ferrari, and then them three are going to be cut a little bit adrift with Alfa Tauri kind of in between them, if that makes sense. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm a little bit concerned for Alfa Romeo. I'd like to see them doing better because, yeah, but they're going to have to convince Kimi to stay, I think, Dan. I know that's speculative, again, not race related. I think they're going to have to convince him to stay at the end of this year because he's not going to want to be qualifying 20th every weekend.
Yeah, I'll just quickly ask. 'Cause I cannot. What did he get a penalty for in this race? I just can't
He
quite
was
remember.
out of position on the starting grid. That was my next point on my piece of paper. Thank you, Dan.
That was it.
Yes, he was out of
Yes.
position on the starting grid, which is quite impressive because he's never been 20th in it. He's never started from the back of the grid in his career before. So he was definitely out of position on the starting grid.
Yeah, it's a funny one because obviously Kimi's out of contract at the end of this year, and I think Gio's out qualified him at every race so far this season. But during the Grand Prix, they seem to be pretty evenly matched. But it's like the two Haas cars and the two Williams drivers to an extent. We're not really going to be able to get a grips on how good they are because we never see them because they're so far behind, and because of that Ferrari power unit. Even if they build a fantastic chassis, they're still not going to really be able to get that much closer to that midfield, which is a huge disappointment considering last year we saw Raikkonen and the two Haas cars over the last couple of years fighting for the best of the rest at times in the season. And this year they look completely nowhere, which is, yeah, really disappointing. But it's great to see, and I'm sure you'll be happy about this, that a couple of those Ferrari youngsters in F2 are doing such a good job. So even if they do lose Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, at least they've got some really hungry drivers that potentially could make that difference. And it's key that Williams have been able to hold on to Russell for another year because we've seen in qualifying for the last two races, he is going to be a big game changer at the fight at the back.
If Russell can continue to develop the way he has this first two seasons, I think Mercedes have got a. I mean, we know he's talented anyway, but I think they've got a natural replacement. Can you replace a driver like Lewis Hamilton? You know what I mean? They've got a natural successor to Lewis in that car. I really think that he did. You couldn't really look at how he did last year because we don't have all the information that the teams have, but you only have to look at the teammate battle and the way he performed, that he was brilliant last year. He's been superb so far this year in a car that is better, but is definitely not a top challenger in that midfield, nowhere near it. And I think he's got a great opportunity to have a very successful Formula One career. I say that with a little bit of caution because I could think of a number of drivers I've said that about in the past who just ended up Sergio Perez in the midfield, quite frankly. Yeah, and I hope Russell doesn't end up like that. But yeah, we'll move on from the back of the field. McLaren, frustrating weekend. They did say they expected this weekend to be a bit more, or to show where they are really. You know, Austria was, I think they feel a bit of an abnormality, a bit abnormal about where their pace is. So this weekend was always going to be a bit more difficult for them. But I still think 1 point, even with all that scepticism from Zach Brown and Andreas Seidel and the drivers before the weekend, I still expected them to be probably where Seb was, P6 and challenging Albon for P5. I'm really surprised they only got 1 point from this weekend.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The difficulty with Hungary is that, like they say, it's basically Monaco in the sense that it's so tricky to overtake. And Norris and Sainz were two of the biggest losers on that opening lap. And Norris in particular just was never quite able to recover. And I think we were all hoping for that scenario 7 final lap heroics. But yeah, they were just a bit of nowhere. I mean, we've already struggled a little bit to talk about the likes of the two Renaults and maybe even Leclerc and Kvyat because we didn't really see them because they just were stuck. And it's just due to the nature of the track. But certainly, yeah, 1 point, considering their opening 2 rounds and where that pace of that McLaren seems to be, disappointing, I think, is how they come away from this one. But overall, the opening 3 rounds have been very, very successful. So I think they'll go to Silverstone in the 70th, whatever it's called, Grand Prix, still in pretty good shape.
70th anniversary Grand Prix, which I still think is a better name than the Northamptonshire Grand Prix, if I'm being honest. But I would have preferred the European Grand Prix, would have been nice. But maybe they're saving that for something else. Who knows? Maybe Portimao. Nah, it's got to be Portuguese Grand Prix, hasn't it? But anyway, yeah, I think sort of going back to what you've said a couple of times now, or certainly earlier in the stream, when you look at the likes of Renault, you look at the likes of McLaren, they all got stuck in that Jarno Leclerc train, didn't they? That's where they were. They were all stuck in that little DRS train. It's Monaco without the barriers. It's the cliche for Hungary, just to remind you there, Dan. Don't forget it for next year. It's an important line to remember, that one, the cliche. And I think that was their problem. and that compromised pretty much all of their race. But I just don't think McLaren have had the pace this weekend at all, and I'm hoping that it's a blip in their season, because they, like you say, they've got to be happy with this first stint of 3 races, whichever way you look at it. 3rd in the Constructors, probably around certain tracks at least going to be quicker than the likes of Ferrari. I think they're going to at least head the midfield this year. I can see it from McLaren. So disappointing weekend, but not an horrific start to the season. It's kind of how I'd sum up everything for McLaren today. But yeah, I don't. Kind of disappointed we didn't see something from Lando on the last lap, like you say. I think everyone was kind of watching the timing screens going, will he do something? Will he do something? Wait, he's going to do something. He never really did. But 7 tenths behind Kvyat, who himself, frankly, recovered fairly well. It was 12th place, five positions. Alfa Tauri, another team that didn't really have the pace. But yeah, not an awful lot to say about some of these drivers. I do want to talk about Gasly briefly. I know I did it earlier, but as weekends go, it just doesn't get much worse, does it, for the poor guy? Power unit problems in practice. Didn't get to take part in FP2 because of the rain, like a lot of other drivers. He did a few laps, but nothing really memorable. Problems with his power unit in qualifying, despite making the top 10, so he's quick and the car is clearly half decent. And his engine blows up despite a load of, or we assume his engine blew up despite a load of changes between qualifying and the race. I mean, a shocker for poor Pierre.
I don't even know what to say about it, because like you say, it just, every time something seemed to be going right, it all just then crumbled. And how he got through to Q3, I will never know. And the race today, he could have been one of those cars that really made good from the opening lap, and maybe a different strategy. So yeah, big disappointment from that team, because we've said it a couple of times, they seem to be in that bit of no man's land, not quite in that midfield, not quite in that backpack, and they need to score points when they can. So yeah, big disappointment from Gasly, who so far has started off the season quite well.
Still no, I can't see any confirmation on whether or not Albon's going to face a penalty. No, he's still under investigation. I mean, I think that's possibly... I hope he doesn't get disqualified. I hope it's a time penalty at worst, but, you know, are you ready for boring line? Rules are rules and all of that business. But anyway, chats, you know what to do. One surname in the chats. Dan, I'll come to you first, because I'm not going to come to myself. Who was your driver of the day? Who are you going for? And you can't say Grosjean.
Am I allowed to say his teammate?
It's a bit predictable, but yeah, if you must.
Fine. I have to, though. I have to. It's between Stroll and Magnussen for me. They're the two that, for whatever... Stroll, with all his issues he's had this year, and, well, the last couple of years, being able to prove people wrong. But I honestly do think that Haas is just a dreadful car. And the fact that he was so competitive so early on, K-Mag, and then to hold on to those points could be crucial at the end of the year. I think that's a massively underrated drive. So, yeah, sorry, mate. I'm going to have to give it to K-Mag.
So much bias, it's unbelievable. On the subject of accusations of bias, I'd quite like to give it to Lewis Hamilton, because his drive was absolutely dominant, but that was my excuse for giving him that last week, so I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to go Verstappen. I am going to go with Max. I think that Red Bull, I'd argue, probably wasn't the second quickest car this weekend, probably third. He had the incident at the start, which, okay, is his fault. He's made a mistake in the wet weather, but whatever. He's got that back. Actually, Red Bull mechanics probably deserve mechanics of the day, that's for sure. But to get that car to the end, it will have felt different. Regardless, that's just my view. I can't believe that everything would have been exactly the same on that car. The way he managed his tyres, managed to beat Bottas to that second place. And let's not forget that Mercedes is absolutely the dominant car now. So to keep him behind, I think is a really solid job. So Max Verstappen for me. I mean, midfield driver of the day. It's difficult not to say K-Mag. I completely see where you're coming from on that. But I think Albon deserves something as well. Maybe like second midfield driver of the day or something. I'm just making awards up now. Third midfield driver of the day goes to. No. But yeah, we'll see what you're saying in chat. Just keep making awards. German of the day, absolutely 100% Sebastian Vettel. No denying that whatsoever. Rosberg? Oh, yes, he was on the big fake jumbo screen. Was it fake jumbo screen? God.
Who
Roberto
knows?
Carlos was there, wasn't he, as well, which was interesting. I mean, they're fans, but I thought we were going to see more of like Steve from Leicester going, "Oh, this is boring." Pennybags says Verstappen for driver of the day. Immortal Zero says Verstappen for outperforming at Red Bull. Ellie Jane, brace yourself for a shock here, Dan. She's gone with Stroll. Kevin Magnussen is the one that Jonty picked, so at least you're as mad as he is. That's absolutely fine. Raoul says Verstappen as well. Bros says Albon. Kirill's going Magnussen. Sean, great name, has gone with Magnussen. Hamilton for Arzar. Red Bull Sauber Patronus. Magnussen. Tyler's gone with Hamilton. David's gone with Vettel. Scroll down a bit further. Dan's gone with Hamilton. Sorry, I hate doing that. I hate doing that. I'll read through driver of the day and then I'll see people having a conversation. And I'll be like, oh, what are they talking about? And then I'll be like, oh, crap, Sean, we're live. Carry on. Vettel for Thomas. Verstappen says Jay Parton. Nick says Vettel. Some love for Seb. Some love for Stroll as well. Magnussen says Freeze. I think it's fair to say Dylan would go with Max or Seb. I'd say chat are very much split between Verstappen and Magnussen with a sprinkling of Lance Stroll. There's an image for you. Yeah, I'd say that. Quite a few saying Hamilton, to be fair, as well. Fill in the blank says Latifi. Yeah, I mean, most entertaining driver of the day was certainly Nicholas Latifi. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, he did 5 laps fewer than anybody. 3 laps down his teammate. I know he had problems, but wow, that's terrible. Terrible. Mechanics of Red Bull, says Frank. I completely agree with that one. There's always a funny one. Super says Yuji Ide or Yuji Ide. Yuji Ide. There you go. And Vettel as well. So yeah, lots of Seb fans as well in there, definitely. And Seb deserves something. I mean, like I say, that car's terrible. Yeah. Let's not get into that one again. So we've done driver of the day. I think many people agreeing. Super quickly, if you've got any questions in chat, start popping them in now. I'm just going to waffle for a few seconds. Massive thank you. It's on screen. You can see it, but massive thank you to everybody who subscribed over the last 3 years and in the last few days to help us get over 100k. It's absolutely... It's mind-blowing. And I'm going to put myself down straight away because I do it all the time because it's who I am. I know 100k isn't anything in the grand scheme of YouTube, but to me that means absolutely the world. I can stop obsessing over it now as well, so I might actually sleep, keep refreshing social play to see if we're going to do it. So yeah, massive thank you to everybody who's helped the channel get to 100k. It's phenomenal. I know it's a YouTuber cliche, but you guys have quite literally changed my life, so I can't thank you enough for that, for everything over the last 3 years. So incredibly humbled by it all. And Dan will back me up. Every milestone you feel like that, whether it's your first subscriber, your 10th subscriber, your 1,000th, your 50,000, whatever, every single milestone you hit means so much, and it's so humbling. So thank you. Thank you all so much. And on that note, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And also, please do drop a like. What are we thumbsing up today, Dan? Should we a thumb up for Kevin Magnussen? I think that's reasonable.
I think just thumb up for Latifi, just to make him feel better. I mean, 5 pit stops, bless him.
Yeah. I would also say that if the audio keeps dropping out, there's somebody out there hearing thumb up for Magnussen, which is possibly not the way to go. But thumb up for Kevin Magnussen or your favourite driver of the day as well. So please do. That'd be appreciated. And we'll take some questions. I will do a 100k special before it gets put in. It will not be... I can't do a face reveal because I've already revealed my face. So I suppose it'd be a 100k face reminder. Maybe.
Something different.
Yeah. Welcome to the 100k face reminder. Yeah, so we will do a special. Hopefully this week. I need to talk to people, looking at Dan's name on screen now, about their availability this week, because I think it'd be nice to get everybody on I can do, who's played a part in this. So, yeah, definitely. Where were the robot trophies? Says LF Tipper. Yes. They were so cringy and so cheesy, but rip. I genuinely was gutted that we didn't see them.
Yeah, F in the chat. I mean, they were lovely. I was surprised we didn't go to the podium in Austria. I'm not quite sure on the protocol why we didn't do that, but I was glad we were up there. But I will miss the podium robots.
I think F1 were just happy to have a race. I think they kind of got podium. I don't know, but I think they were just happy to get a race in. But I think actually credit as well to F1 and the FIA for getting these three races done without and a couple of positive COVID tests, I think, now, which they've managed to sort of isolate, so that's good. No major hiccups. Bottas and Leclerc going home. I don't want to get into that too much, but I think when your mechanics are literally locked in their hotel rooms for a week, the least you can do is be there to support. But whatever, if you want to go home, that's up to them. They did it safely, apparently, so that's all that matters, I guess, is the way to go. Why do they call it the pink Mercedes, says Sam Watson? Because it's a direct copy of last year's car, Sam, is the idea. And it's a legal copy, we think. Obviously, the brake ducts might be a different situation, but the car itself, they've studied photographs and they've copied it because they quite openly said that, hey, you know, they're doing a better job than us, so let's go and copy their car. So there you go. That's why they call it the pink Mercedes. I think Tracing Point is another one they like to call it as well. So, yeah, good fun. Is Romain Grosjean done, finally, says Hanu. That's just got damn written all over that question. I fear, mate, if Vettel goes to Aston Martin, which I'm predicting right now he will, Perez is probably going to take that seat with all his Mexican money at Haas, and we're probably going to see the back of Rogro, which I will be sad about, genuinely, because he's a lovely guy.
Yeah. I mean, the way that question was worded with finally at the end, I'm not too keen on that. Though I'll agree with it, because how he's still here, I don't really know. But yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, races like today as well, bless him, going backwards, it wasn't nice to see. And yeah, his time's coming near to its end anyway. And if we saw another, we saw last year Hulkenberg leave, if then we're seeing the likes of Perez leave and Grosjean still there, that even though I'm a Grosjean fanboy, it wouldn't quite sit right with me. So it probably is his final season, but hey, he survived 2018 and 19, so who knows at this point.
I mean, as well, because you've got, from a Haas point of view, if you ignore what, I'm not getting tinfoil hatty, don't worry, if you ignore what the media say, there is somebody was pointed out to me the other day on either Twitter or in the comments, so apologies, I should have looked this up, but there's actually a very good relationship between the US and Mexico. So to have a Mexican driver who is, you know, would you say Central America, Mexico, maybe? But
yeah,
it'd be the same if Lance Stroll went there from, you know, Canadian, sort of North America. There is that, I'm going to say synergy, but I don't know if I'm making that word up. I'm having one of those days, but there is that there, and I think it would be a great marketing move, and he brings money, which is something that I know Gene Haas has got a bob or two. He's not short of a few, but I think that's money that Haas could really do within developing that car for 22. So I think Perez and the experience he brings and the way he drives, I think he'd be a great fit for Haas. I really, really do. Could get quite tasty between him and K-Mag, which I think will be an interesting one. But the Perez thing, I'd be gutted if Perez went, but I was gutted if Hulkenberg went. And ultimately, these drivers leave, and then after a while, you sort of think, well, yeah, we miss them. And yeah, it's a shame they've gone, but sort of got to move on, haven't you? And just accept that that's, you know, 20 seats, hundreds, if not thousands of drivers vying for every single one of those. People are gonna lose their seats, and I just feel like Perez is massively underrated and should be in a better car, and he's finally got that better car, and it looks like he's going to be going back down the grid again. And I feel for the guy. But do you think? I know it's still all rumours and speculation, Dan, but do you think Vettel's in that car next year? I'm almost certain of it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I think I am leaning towards it, to be honest now. I wasn't about a week ago. And then even Perez this weekend openly admitting that other teams are contacting him about a drive for next year. There's got to be something there. And from an Aston Martin point of view, what a marketing stunt that would be to bring in a driver like Sebastian Vettel, four-time world champion, forget the performances of the last couple of years. As an outsider, as a real casual Formula One fan, you will see that Aston Martin's first year of F1, Vettel's going into that car, and your interest is straight on that team. So I can understand why they do it. And Vettel, we've seen today, still has pace and can still do a solid job. But it would be a shame for Checo. But I think he's not done yet in F1. And if he did go to a team like Haas, he's still that one of those drivers that somehow can just sneak his way onto the podium. but it would be a shame because it finally seems like he's got a chance at a top team. But I do think Vettel is probably on his way to Aston.
Yeah, I agree. The Mercedes ties are there as well, and I think that will entice Seb to sort of be under the Mercedes umbrella in some way, just in case Lewis Hamilton decides to call it a day and he gets an opportunity there. So I think that's where if not, I think he'll take a sabbatical, possibly leave forever. But it does feel a bit too early to lose Seb at the minute, to be honest. 32, 33 this year. Oh, 33 now. We're in July, aren't we? Yeah. Look at me. I know his birthday and everything. Oh, my posters on the wall. Oh, Seb. Yeah, no, I think he's 33 now, so it does feel a little bit too early to lose him. But yeah, seats fill up very quickly. That's the point I was making. GDS05, I've sort of paused the chat at this point because I wanted to do this one because I might not be doing the video tomorrow. We need a driver of the weekend, which I completely forgot about. So thank you so much for reminding me of that one. I think driver of the whole weekend, for me, I think Strolly boy, Lance Stroll. P3 in quali.
Unbelievable.
Oh, sorry, mate. Oh, hang on. Latifi, 100%.
Wow. Go on, continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're right, mate. No, I think Lance Stroll, P3, qualifying, out-qualified Perez again. Fourth in the race, possibly could have done a bit more. Raced well. Yeah, I'd go with Lance Stroll.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was going to agree. And I think the difficulty is drivers either had a brilliant qualifying and a rubbish race or a rubbish qualifying and a great race. So I think apart from Stroll, the only other driver that had a great quali and great race was Lewis Hamilton. Untouchable. Really was. Qualifying pretty much league of his own once again. And in the race, we said earlier, almost another Grand Slam. So yeah, either of those two. But Stroll probably just nicks it for me.
Yeah, I can't keep mentioning Hamilton though, can I? I'm British.
No. Well, you don't want to keep adding to that shrine either.
Oh, don't. I always with the shrine. Oh, my God. A couple of super chats. I hate you. No. Annette, thank you very much for your super chat. Annette says 100k was incredibly well deserved. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for your support as well, Annette. It's good fun. Good fun over on to Discord as well when I finally get on there a bit more. Loads going on at the minute, which I can't say anything about, but I loads going on. And I'll be able to update you all hopefully soon. So, yes. Also, thank you very much for your super chats. I can't read your name. Apologies. It's not translating for me. But, yeah, who's your standout driver of this year? Also, Kazu, sorry. Who's my standout driver of the year so far? Oh, I've only had 3 races. Oh, no. Preempting comments. Lando Norris, I think, is my standout driver so far this season. In the sense that I wasn't expecting this from him. You could easily say Hamilton's been superb. You could also say Bottas was brilliant in that first weekend. Did a good job in the second weekend. Verstappen's driving the wheels off that Red Bull. Absolutely. But I was not expecting this start of the season from Lando Norris. Yes, 13th today? But a podium, first race of the season. Those last lap antics in Styria. Got to be Norris for me, Dan.
I hate to do. I think I don't want to agree with you. That's wrong. That's illegal. I think Norris. He's one of the few drivers. Today wasn't great, but has generally just been consistent all the way through since day dot. Even Hamilton had his blip in that first weekend. So yeah, with that podium, he seems to have really had a bit of a boost, bit of energy this year. So yeah, I'm gonna have to be boring again and say Norris, though. George Russell has been great in qualifying, but races, the last couple, not so good. So, yeah, Norris is probably the one I'm going to have to go with.
Yeah. There you go. Answered that one. Thank you very much for your super chats. Massively appreciated as always. British bias in chat already. Oh, shut up, Phil Pot. He's on one already. I had a question. Sorry, I'm pausing. I shouldn't be pausing. I shouldn't be erming. It really annoys me. It annoys me more than it annoys you, I can assure you. Do you think we will have an F2 driver in F1 next year? Maybe Schwartzman replacing Raikkonen, says Frank Linux. Yes. Not necessarily replacing Raikkonen. Robert Schwartzman. Look, I put it on Twitter earlier. Schwartzman topping the championship. You've got Callum Ilott, not Eilert. He's not top of a curtain. Callum Ilott is second in the championship, and you've got Mick Schumacher fourth. They're all from the Ferrari Driver Academy. They are 3 very good young talents. And I think all the talk seems to be about Mick Schumacher, who has improved so much this year, and it's typical of him. He doesn't have a great first season in these series, but he definitely picks up in his second year, and he's had a great start. But people just, all the talk of Schwartzman and all the talk of Schumacher, people are forgetting that Ilott is doing a very good job in that car, and he's also in with a shout next year. And it could well be, and it's a crazy thought, and I'd kind of love it if we got 3 of them straight into F1 next year, or for 22, have Schwartzman, Schumacher and Ilott, 1 in a Haas, 2 in an Alfa, or in an Alfa each, not all in one car. But I think that would be brilliant. I'm a big fan of Robert Schwartzman. I have been for a long time. I think he's a hell of a talent. He reminds me sort of watching him race, not in the same way that he drives, but just how I feel about him as a driver. It's how I felt about Leclerc, watching him come through the ranks. I think he's got a hell of a lot of talent. And if I were in Alfa Romeo's position right now, I'd be picking him over Schumacher and Ilott. But at the same time, I want all 3 of them in Formula 1 if we can, because they're doing so well in Formula 2. And I mean, that series is insane anyway. And it's such a good field this year as well. So yeah, I think we will see at least one of them in F1 next year. And if I were Antonio Giovinazzi, I'd be a little bit nervous about my seat.
I think more than a little bit. I mean, they're smashing it, aren't they?
I don't like to swear. He'll be plopping himself.
Yeah. No, they're honestly doing such a good job. And I'm exactly like you. I don't want to echo what you just said, but I think all 3 of them should be given an opportunity next year. I've said Haas, I think, need a bit of a refresh, whether that's 1 or 2 drivers. I think Alfa Romeo could probably do with getting maybe a Schumacher and a Schwartzman. I think whichever one of them finishes higher naturally should be given an opportunity. And definitely, I think one of those Ferrari junior drivers will probably win the title. So why not take 2 of them if you're an Alfa Romeo and your car's not going to be fighting for points on a regular basis and getting a bit of fresh blood? And at the same point, you've also got Lundgaard, who's part of the Renault Academy, who's doing a great job. Got a little bit unlucky this weekend with a bit of contact with Giotto. You've got Ticktum. I know a lot of people aren't his biggest fan, but even for Williams, that's an option. So it's great that finally we've got a few of these drivers now getting their first opportunities at F2, and they're all doing such a good job. And you've got drivers like Louis Delatraz, Jack Aitken, that I think a lot of people thought would fight for the title this year in F2. Absolutely nowhere. So I think that really proves their ability. And I think it's really great that over the next couple of years in F1, we're going to have some awesome young drivers.
I got so much stick the other week. Was it last week? No, week before. When Ticktum got his podium, and I was properly excited about the fact he got a podium. And it's he's trash. So he's not trash. Has he been an idiot? Yep. Has he done stupid things? Yep. Has he said stupid things? Yep. Name me one person on the planet that hasn't. But he's so quick. He is so quick, and he's proving that in Formula 2. He's a very, very talented driver who... And, I've never spoken to him. I'd love to. And I'd love to ask him this. But I feel he'd agree. He just needs to keep his gob shut and just keep it clean and just get on with the racing. And I think he's got a good future. I don't think we're looking at... You look at him as a world champion or anything like that. But he's, like you say, a good option for Williams for the future if George Russell leaves at the end of next year, as many expect he will do. So, yeah, he's another one better than people say. He has his moments. He's going to be divisive, but... Got to have a villain. What's the point? There's got to be a villain somewhere, Dan.
Yeah, and I mean, people always say there's not enough characters in F1. And, if we're going to lose Raikkonen and Seb over the next couple of years, come on, Ticktum's a great character.
Is Raikkonen a personality? Or is he just a meme at this point? Yeah, anyway, I don't know what to say on that one, but no, I agree. Yeah, he's a personality. Dan Taylor saying there, Ticktum has matured. Absolutely has. Somebody asked, I think it was James, asking about what's going on with Haas. In terms of right now, they're under investigation for possibly using driver aids on the formation lap. In general, they're not great. They're struggling a lot. And I think Gunther Steiner is confident they'll stay in Formula One, but You're Gene Haas, are you going to want to pay through the nose for 17th, 18th, 19th place some weekends or most weekends? I'm not convinced he will, but we'll see. I hope they stay. I like Haas. They entered F1 in the right way. Gunther Steiner, don't get me wrong, I would not want to work for him, but I think he's absolutely hilarious. And I like that they've got a couple of feisty drivers. Don't tell Dan I said that. But yeah, I do. So I hope they stick around. We'll see. We will see. But at the moment, it's all just that investigation. Still nothing on Albon from what I've seen. And I don't think we'll get anything before we go off air or end the live stream. That sounded a bit too formal. Yeah, I don't know what's saying that. What will happen to the We Racers 1 when we arrive in Russia is a question in chat. I've seen that a couple of times this weekend. We'll see. You'd like to think F1 will stand by their guns, but we'll see. Guys, how many stops did Leclerc do? A race-related question. Let's have a look. He did 2 stops in the race. That was for Blazing Thermite. He did 2. Mark my words, Seb and Max will race together, says Gus. I think a couple of others seem to think that move to Red Bull is probably going to happen. I'm not totally sure about that one myself. But, yeah, I think looking at this weekend just as a whole, I think there's a lot to look forward to this season. And I know Mercedes are probably going to bog off with this championship, and people are going to say F1's boring and it's dead and it's terrible and Mercedes are ruining the sport, but they're not. Red Bull and Ferrari and whoever else need to pull their finger out and build a car that's capable of challenging them. That's always going to be my position. It was my position when Schumacher was dominating. You know, people, my family criticising him and taking shots at him all the time. It's like, well, others need to build a better car then, don't they? It's as simple as that. As simple as that. It's a nice, easy job being a designer, isn't it? But I think a lot of positives. Whatever happens with Mercedes, you've got Red Bull. They probably are going to end up second, but they're not clear at every race. You know, you're going to get the racing points, you're going to get in the mix, and the McLaren's going to get in the mix. That's great to see. There's nothing between the rest of the field, really. We've got resurgence in Williams. I think there's a lot to look forward to this season, and I don't think this was a thrilling race in the sense that, and I must stress when I say that, I don't mean it was rubbish. I just mean it wasn't the chaos of Austria. It wasn't the chaos of Germany last year. But we're not always going to get that in Formula One. And sometimes, how can I word this? When it comes to Formula One, if you're a new fan and you kind of find stuff like the championship being decided really quickly a bit dull, sometimes in Formula One, you've really got to look for your enjoyment in the sport. You've got to search for those battles in the midfield, and that is what I always do, and that is why I'll always love Formula One, and that is why I'm still very excited about this season, Dan. And I do think Bottas will take the fight to Hamilton this year. I think Hamilton will come out on top, but I think we're going to get a great scrap in that one. It might get a little bit tasty, a little bit spicy, as you would say, Dan. We might get some contact, a bit of Rosberg Hamilton, and that might throw variables into the weekend. But I'm very excited for this season, and I think we've got 2 races at Silverstone, which tends to throw up some good races. Barcelona, you can probably just pencil Hamilton in for the win for that now. At least a Mercedes win, that's pretty much them. And then we've got, Belgium and I think, yeah, very much looking forward to this season. I don't think Ferrari fans are looking forward to Monza. That's going to be a bit painful for him, Dan.
And Mugello. Double header for him. Poor guys. But you're right. I think Bottas will give Hamilton a good run for his money. I think that's certainly not over yet. And I think this is one of the best midfield fights we have potentially ever had. We have got pretty much every single team except Mercedes and that back little gaggle in that fight. And we're going into every weekend. I mean, this weekend, a Racing Point was almost on the podium through pace. We saw a McLaren on the podium. I honestly think that it could be a really strong season this year. And if you want to be kept on your toes in F1, for all you new fans, support a Haas driver, because you're never sure what they're going to do.
That's the best bit of advice I've ever heard. Support a Haas driver because they might just crash. It's as simple as that. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this season. I know it'll divide a few people, that one. It's not part of any agenda. I've just always loved Formula One. And I can tell you right now, I know Mercedes is dominating, but I've watched some stinkers in the past in terms of races and in terms of championships. Even as a Schumacher fan, it's hard not to admit that 2004 was a bit... Oh, yeah. I mean, it was great as a fan, but I can imagine as a neutral it was terrible. But I think that midfield is going to be insane. It's not. Can we call it a midfield? It kind of feels like it's Mercedes, sometimes Red Bull, and the midfield, but then everybody else. It's sort of battle for third, isn't it? do we think?
Yeah. So, I mean, what do we call them? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Usually when I do the timestamps for this, I just label them as the rest.
The rest. Okay, we'll go with that.
Top 3, whoever we talk about for a bit, and then the rest is how I tend to do it, because that's kind of the majority of the field, isn't it, now? And that's great. That's great, but get building your cars, guys. Make better cars. Get closer to... Just imagine how amazing it would be if we had Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari fighting at the front as we normally have this last few seasons. Even Mercedes still come out on top, and then that midfield, the rest. It'd be insane. It'd be so exciting. But yeah, I'm ready for it. Are you looking forward to Silverstone, Dan? I know we can't go this year, which sucks, but yeah.
I think so. I think it's the best circuit we've had so far this season. And to get it twice, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Going to be good. 70th anniversary Grand Prix. That's going to be fun on thumbnails. I'll say that one. I might just put Silverstone 2 or something like that on my walls. But yeah, very much looking forward to it. Thank you, Dan. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you for coming. I legitimately forgot who I'd asked. How terrible is that? But yeah, thank you for coming on, mate. It's a pleasure as always. And maybe a slightly more chilled week this week. I'm sure you'll have lots of content for everybody on your channel, but no mad rush this week, is there now? Nice and chill. A break.
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed these 3 weeks, but a week off I think would be nice. But, no, thanks for having me, mate. I hope you weren't too disappointed when you found out it was me. But again, congratulations on the 100k, dude. Very much deserved, and looking forward to the next couple of races.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that, and thank you for your part in it. And I'll be honest, no more disappointed than I normally am. So that's that's harsh. That's really harsh.
Wow.
But yeah, no.
See you later.
Yeah, see you later, mate. Thank you.
Bye.
Awesome stuff. Yes, bantery. Apologies for that at the end. They're just waffling away. That is it for this stream, this reaction waffle thing, whatever we're calling it these days. Massively appreciate your company through this one, and thank you once again for that awesome milestone of 100,000 subscribers. It's insane. I am refreshing my dashboard constantly now for my release code so I can show you all my award when it arrives. I know you've seen them, but it'll have the F1 word on there, which would be cool. There will be a 100k special at some point next week. It might be the weekend, it might be in the week. I will let you know over on social media, so make sure you follow me over there for updates. Again, I will also let you know if there's a video tomorrow one way or another. Just depends on how things go, but more on that hopefully in the future. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. I will be back with content next week. I'm not taking a week off. There will still be videos, as I'm sure many creators will. Just a little bit more relaxed next week, which I'm looking forward to. I will do something on Vettel, Aston Martin, Perez, that whole thing there, and some other stuff too, but I'm not going to commit to anything just yet. But yeah, like I say, don't forget to follow me on social media, subscribe if you're new, and please do drop a like before you disappear. Like I say, thumb up Magnussen. That's what we're doing today. But as ever, thank you for watching, and I hopefully catch you again in the next one. Bye-bye.